doesn't want her to bother him anymore. What I think for us today in our own lives and how this story can be related to us is that God is always asking us to be persistent with Him as He is with us. Persistent in our prayer, persevering in study of His Word, and living out His love and His light and peace, of loving God and loving our neighbor, and how that makes itself manifest in our lives here in fall of 2013 in Rockwell County. This particular part of the Gospel in the 18th chapter is known as the teaching of Jesus while on the final journey to Jerusalem. As I mentioned, last week, where he goes through Samaria and he's heading down to Jerusalem from the Galilee region, and how he comes across this widow. And this study for us on this story is to continue to be reminded of what our faith is to us and what it means. As you know, this fall, right now in October, is stewardship season. This is a time around the entire world when people are gathering in and getting ready to gather in what it means to be good stewards. Now, when we think about stewardship, we think about, of course, time and talent and treasure. And we'll focus on the time and talent. We do that all the time, every day, but we'll focus on what those gifts might mean for you in the early spring. So the focus this fall is on the third part, the treasure part. And you should know that the Stewardship Committee, which consists of about 4 or 5 of your vestry members, has been meeting diligently over the last couple of months. One meeting a few weeks ago was 2.5 hours. And what we're going to do, as I think some of you already know, is that a couple weeks from now, on November the 10th, we're going to have one service at 10 o'clock. And after that service, when we gather up the pledge card, which will be mailed out in about a week, we're going to bless them on the altar and offer them to God. And then we're going to go into the next building and have a big party, a party catered by La Madeleine, a party to thank you for your prayers and your presence and your pledge and your commitment, and to your prayers for this place, for those who are in this church. And when we do that, we're then going to focus then on, instead of gathering like we did in the past, but seeing how much the pledges are and what the amount is, and then determining what our ministries are from that, which is not a way of abundance. We're actually working very diligently right now with John and the treasurer, and we haven't gotten to a point yet, and we haven't even presented it to the vestry, but where we're going to come up with a budget for 2014. A budget that suits our growth, that suits the new renewal, vigor, spirit of this church, of Holy Trinity by the Lake. And then to take that budget and look and see, what do we need in the music ministry? What do we need in pastoral care? What do we need in the youth ministry, education ministry, outreach, evangelism, etc.? And then take that number and say, that's our goal. And then to try to seek that number and to raise that number to fit those ministries, as opposed to the other way around. And so when we do that, what we're doing in a very deliberate fashion with 9 people on the Stewardship Committee this year, unlike in the past couple of years, there's been 1 or 2, with this renewed vigor, we're being very deliberate and parsing out everything very carefully. And so as we do this, we're also asking you to prayerfully consider what your pledge will be, what your commitment will be. And some have said, I give to the church, but I don't pledge because I don't want to be tied down. You can always change your pledge. But what that does is allows us, by having a pledge, to be able to see what do we have, what is coming in for 2014. To take that amount, divide it into 12, and put that toward our budget each month. And then to take off 9 or 10% of uncollectible funds, which may happen when people may live away, or people may lose their job, or may have a hardship in their life, and we understand that, and that happens in churches, the 9 or 10%. fluctuation point. And as a former banker, as you know, before I became a priest, being very deliberate in how we use our money, your money. Take a look now at what we're doing and looking at the resources and expenses of the church and understanding that in the very hot summer where most of our utilities go for air conditioning and how we don't have to worry about that today, thank goodness, and how we continue to work on making this place more efficient, doing more things online and reducing the cost of paper. All these things which are being examined and looked at this time period. You need to know that your committee and your vestry is working very diligently on this. And so that when you make a pledge, when you make a commitment, it will not go to wasted electricity or energy or things of that nature. And so what we look at is we look at where God has blessed us in our lives and how God does that. And then we offer that up in terms of joy. But also there's another way to do stewardship. A way that says, and you're welcome to come to any finance committee meeting or any vestry meeting, they're open to the public, there are no secrets here, to be able to say, look, what are our expenses? What does it cost for these lights? What does it cost for the depreciation? What does it cost to have the crack in the foundation repaired in the other building? What do we do with these particular things and how we live that out in a very careful way? So we have a wonderful, joyous way of lifting up to God through our gifts and our grace and all the blessings of our lives. But at the same time, we also have an organization to run that costs money. And so one of the things that happens in an interim time period, I want you to know, and you may already know this, but we have a split of a division of labor. In the normal time period, when there's not an interim time period in churches around the world, it's usually the 80-20 rule. And what that means is that 20% of the people do about 80% of the work in a church. And sometimes in interim time periods, people pull back, and then it becomes 90-10, where 10% of the people do 90% of the work. And thankfully, that's not happening here, because that would not be a good model to go 90-10. People are stepping up. The church is bubbling with new people. Some of you are new here today. I don't recognize you, and I want to give you a coffee mug on your way out. So thank you for being here. I welcome you. We have 25 children signed up for Christian Education Formation Sunday School, a record number. We have 12 children who signed up in the first couple of weeks, little toddlers in the nursery. We have to expand the nursery. And I know you've heard me say that, but in reality, if you take a look at what your search committee is doing and the idea that you want to grow, this is happening. Especially important in a church that 50% of the membership is over the age of 50. And 30% of the membership is over the age of 70. So those of you in that category can know that this church will continue once you pass on into the other world. With new families, new growth, new life, new leaders. That's why on this Sunday we bring up a young person up to the altar to be able to lift up the youth. And maybe God, maybe one day might call some of these young people forward to be a clergy. We also we're lifting up lay ministry in a visual way, not just talking about it, but walking the walk by having lay people up at the altar as opposed to having this in a very, secretive type of priest area only. No. It's all about you and how God is moving in you and through you at this church at this time in your lives, in our lives. And so yes, like the gospel today, the stewardship committee or the priest or whomever might become the persistent widow. And so after the 10th of November, what's going to happen, I'm just telling you now so that your response is not like the judge who thinks that we're bothering you. But the persistent widow, the stewardship committee, the priest, will be calling on you. Send them a letter asking for your commitment if you've not made it by the 10th. So that we can devise the budget. That we can see what's happening here. Continue to lift up God's movement in this church. And some of you are doing things already in this church. So much. Tom, who's on the endowment committee. Kathy, who's on the vestry. Bill, who helps run the Brotherhood of St. Andrew. Steve, who teaches a class. Patsy, who makes the mugs that you receive, the newcomer mugs. Jeff, chair of the committee of stewardship. There's so much happening here, and so many people have jumped in, Sydney on the search committee, that when your new rector comes, whatever that is, sometime in 2014, it will be a place that is strong, financially strong, a place that continues to lift up the programs of the church, to welcome in, to continue on the momentum that God has put in this church and in our hearts. And so when you think and pray about what your pledge is you might struggle like Jacob did in our early reading, our first reading. You might strive with God to determine what that is. But even when Jacob wrestled with God, with the angel, God blessed him. God blessed him and changed his name. That's a very significant point. When you change a name in the Hebrew Scriptures, when someone's name is changed from Sarai to Sarah, from Abram to Abraham, from Yaakov or Jacob to Israel, when you change a name, it means something new. A new commitment, a new covenant, a new day, a new chapter. And that's what we have at Holy Trinity by the Lake. A new day. A new exciting energy that God has lifted up and continues to do that in this place. And so I hope that you will be a part of it and help us to move forward into 2014 with that. And if you're not, and if you don't, let me know. Come and see me. Call me. We can talk about it. And try to see what's happening. Because we are going to ask for 100% commitment. And so may God give you that on your heart and on my heart. May God mold and shape and continue to guide us along the way, which He guided you here today. And may we never forget the blessings that we've been given each and every day. May we always pray thanks to God for that and share it with those we love